Question six. Somebody asked about the Jesus predicting in Matthew chapter 24 about the sun, moon, and stars. If Jesus came back, then how in the world did that happen? Right? How in the world did the sun, moon, and stars, they're all falling from the sky, etc.? Well, this is called that in Bible study, in hermeneutics, we have to know the genre of literature. And I think that every time that you go into a New Testament passage and you start reading things, you really have to know the Old Testament. Because Jesus, one, argues from the Old Testament. He doesn't argue from a local newspaper. He's not speaking English when he's talking. He's not speaking with English lingo and with English slang. He's talking from the Hebrew perspective. So let's just go to the verse real quick. Matthew chapter 24, 29 through 31. It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So this here is a verse that needs to be answered because many have taken this literally. But how can this be literally, right? Because after all this happens, he says, and verse 31, and he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four winds and one end of heaven to the other. And so I just want to show you a couple Old Testament passages that use the same language. So you need the Old Testament to understand the New Testament. You cannot know the New Testament properly without its Old Testament backdrop. Okay? And so Isaiah 13:7, I want you to hear this. What Isaiah 13:7 says, it's a prediction. It says, behold, I'm going to stir up the Medes against them, referring to Babylon. This is a prophecy that Babylon is going to fall by Cyrus the Great. And he united the Medes and the Persians together, and he fulfilled this prophecy in about 539 BC. Okay, but let's just hear what Isaiah the prophet is saying here. So I'm going to quote verse 7, then I'm going to skip to verse 9 through 10. It says, behold, I'm going to stir up the Medes against them. Okay, let's go to 9. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their lights. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light. You hear that? And this prophecy was already fulfilled. Isaiah is saying, these are the things that's going to happen when Babylon falls. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their light. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light. The way futurists would see this, applying their interpretation method to Jesus in Matthew 24, they would see this as a global event. And so this is the problem here. They're seeing this as a global event. No, it's from the perspective of the people that are in Babylon. There's going to be so much war. In all war, there's always smoke. You can't see the stars of heaven. You can't see the moon, or the moon looks red like it turned to blood. This is from their perspective. Okay? This is what they would see. God is making a new world system. So this is why he uses, these stars, heaven, the sun and the moon not shining, etc. This is from their perspective. And guess what? This already happened in history. The majority of scholars believe this, at least historical scholars that are studying the Old Testament. And so it says, behold, I'm going to stir up the Medes against them. And then he goes on to say, the stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their light. The sun will be dark when it arises, and the moon will not shed its light. Well, Jesus is using the same judgment language against Jerusalem in Matthew 24. And guess what? It was fulfilled in 70 AD. This actually happened. And so this is not just one time that the Old Testament does this, but it does it many times in the Old Testament. And let me see if I can find another one. So this one here is in Ezekiel 32. This is a prophecy of Babylon conquering Egypt. And guess what? Babylon conquered Egypt in 568 BC. And this is what Ezekiel says. So this prophecy is already fulfilled, okay? So Ezekiel 32, 7 through 8. And when I extinguish you, I will cover the heavens and darken their stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give its light. All the shining lights in the heavens I will darken over you. You. So he's talking to that nation. And will set darkness all on your land. Look at that. That's another example here. And guess what? This was already fulfilled prophecy. Do you see that? When God comes against a nation, this is how he predicts their judgment. Isaiah 34, 4 through 5. All the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved. The heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down. And the leaf falls from the vine, and as their fruit falling from a fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Indeed, it shall come down on Edom and on the people of my curse for judgment. You see that? That's another one against Edom. This is a prophecy against Edom. And so this is called judgment language. Without knowing the Old Testament backdrop, you're never going to understand this. Just say if it's literal prediction, like futurists want to say. And that means the heavens and all this have fell and melted and so on many times in history. So then it would be all the more challenging for the futurists to say, well, Jesus is saying it's going to happen again and everything's going to be fine after that, right? Well, this is exactly the point. The heavens, the judgment language is non-literal. God is exaggerating the point of his coming to that nation to destroy it and wipe it out. But I would say it is literal in the sense that the people experiencing it would see I mean, I will take it back, not see, but they would not see the stars. They would not see the sun and the moon because of war, because of the judgment of God upon that nation. Just like it says in Isaiah, I will stir up the Medes against Babylon. Yeah, God makes another nation come and destroy nations, and that's God coming in judgment. The same thing that happened in 70 AD. The Roman government, the Roman armies came against Jerusalem. Who did that? God did that, because this is their judgment for rejecting their Messiah and saying they have no king but Caesar.